All right, so in this video, I'm going to show you how I built a cold email engine that sent 2.5 million emails. I'm going to show you the full stack and every single step of how you can also build the exact same engine that will generate pipeline for you. So just some quick credentials on myself and our business. So we've sent 2.5 million cold emails over the past 6 months across multiple B2B clients, SaaS, fintech, recruitment services, agency services, all sorts of different things. It's generated over 200,000 in revenue across all of those clients. And this is obviously real data, and this is not theory. This is real data from real campaigns. So here's just a couple of examples. There's obviously plenty more screenshots, but you get the point. So what we're going to be covering here is a full engine walkthrough, basically all the individual steps and components that make up a cold email engine here that actually is going to drive proper pipeline for you on a consistent and reliable basis. I'm going to go through every single layer, every tool, and every decision that we sort of make, and then also the stack that lets you send that scale without necessarily breaking. So the 4 layers are infrastructure, right? What the actual email sending domains, mailboxes, etc., that you need to actually be able to run the entire thing. The data, we're going to also cover copy plus AI and the important / sometimes not very important aspects of AI and some of the red herrings that might come up and distract you a little bit. And then attribution, right? Attribution is making sure that the entire process kind of runs together, right? Because if you have infrastructure, data, copy, and you're running campaigns, but you have no way of understanding which one is actually leading to revenue, which one is leading to meetings booked, like qualified meetings booked, you're not going to be able to then tweak things on the front end in terms of your data, your copy, and things like that to actually be able to then try and get more of those outputs, right? So it's just literally just like any other form of marketing. It is a case of testing things, understanding what works, and doubling down on what works. But in order to do that, you need a feedback loop to understand the things that have worked, to double down on those things, right? And we want to go beyond just replies, interested, leads, and things like that. We want to go to the next step, which is number of qualified meetings, and then ultimately, obviously, basing things on the amount of deals that have actually been closed. Now, of course, deals closed is going to take a little bit of time to actually get that data, depending on obviously how large a ticket, your sales cycle, things like that. But in general, that's what you want to strive for. But then obviously the next best step is number of qualified meetings and things like the actual sales calls themselves, taking the transcripts, things like that, understanding like what's been working, what's not working, and then feeding that back in basically to the whole system, to the whole engine, so that you can really compound it over time. Who is this video for? So this video is for founders, CEOs, and sales leaders running their own outbound and looking to grow and scale. You need more clients, you need more leads, you need more qualified meetings, but you're struggling to have a consistent level of pipeline. This is for you basically if you're struggling to generate the kind of pipeline that you need in a reliable and consistent fashion. So let's go and dive into layer 1, which is the infrastructure. So the best offer and copy and everything in the world literally does not matter if the email doesn't land, right? The infrastructure is the foundation. If you get that wrong, then everything else downstream breaks, right? You can have the best copy, the best offer, the best data, but if no one sees your email, no one's going to reply to your email, right? And if it's all going in spam, no one's going to care and see it at all. So there's a couple different components this breaks down into. So got sending setup. So this is making sure that you've actually got the correct domains, the mailboxes, and like done properly, essentially. Want to make sure that if you're doing somewhat relatively high volume, and I'm talking like several hundred emails a day all the way up to several thousand emails per day, then you're going to want to take this seriously, because this is the bulk of your engine of what's going to allow you to actually send and get relevant messaging in front of your ideal customer, right? So dedicated sending domains, you never want to send from your primary, right? So for example, my email address, oliver@leadify.ai, I wouldn't send cold emails from oliver@leadify.ai. I would create alias mailboxes that are similar to that, like oliver@tryleadify.ai or oliver@leadify.ai.group.com, and so on and so forth, right? I'd create variations of that with usually a .com ending, and I would create variations of those so that you can have dedicated sending accounts for actual cold emails, right? So you just want to keep that completely separate from your primary domain. Now, obviously, you're going to set it up so that those will forward to your main website, to your main domain, so that if someone were to type that domain in, they can then visit your website and it will forward it to your website, right? You're going to also have mailboxes that are spread across those domains. So usually, for example, we'll use Google mailboxes and Microsoft mailboxes. if you have Google mailboxes, usually we'll set up about 2 or 3 mailboxes per domain. And with Microsoft, we'll usually set up about 25 mailboxes per domain. We use a company called Scaled Mail for everything. They handle all of our infrastructure. They're really, really good. I really recommend them. We've been working with them now for like a year and a half, and they've been really good. And they provide very good value mailboxes for cold outreach, right? And what you're able to do is then buy a package there and then start actually sending your cold emails from those specific packages, right? So next is the warm-up, right? The warm-up, this is something that people get wrong and sometimes the clients ask me about. Warm-up always stays on. You turn warm-up on day one. So once you've bought the domain, once you've connected the mailboxes to that domain, and once you've connected the mailboxes and the domain to your sending platform, then you enable warm-up. Once warm-up is on and it's automatically sending, and warm-up just basically email addresses in a warm-up pool, essentially not talk to each other, but email each other, and will reply to each other's emails, so that you basically starts to signify that this is a real mailbox, basically, because it's having conversation and it's going back and forth and stuff. All of that obviously automatic. But the main thing that you want to do is, number one, put that on for 2 weeks, at least 14 days before you start sending. And then the second thing is you always keep it on. You don't turn it off after 14 days when you start sending cold outreach. Once you start sending cold outreach after day 14, you keep it on, right? It always stays on. You just don't touch it. You just turn it on once and you just keep it on forever, right? That's the main thing. And then you want to make sure that the next thing here, which is seg awareness. This one's maybe a little bit more sort of advanced, but it's also something really important that we notice a lot of times in our campaigns, which is when you're building a lead list, right? Some of the leads in that lead list, especially if you're going after slightly larger companies, mid-markets, enterprise, etc., if you're going after those, a lot of times they're obviously going to have some sort of security, email security, right? You can't just email, Microsoft or Amazon or Apple. Like, they have hundreds of thousands of employees. Like, you're not just gonna be able to email them and they've got no security whatsoever. They obviously have very stringent security, and these are known as SEGs, secure email gateways. And there's a couple of big players in the space, which are Mimecast, Proofpoint, and Barracuda. They're literally anti-spam, anti-email spam, right? So they will have much harder filters for cold emails, which means that you need to either increase your sender reputation, i.e., length of time and quality of your email outreach over time, as in you're getting lots of replies and things like that. That indicates to these tools, to these tools here, that basically this is a good quality sender and therefore more likely to come through. Doesn't mean so it's harder to get through to these, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. We get replies from Proofpoint, Mimecast, etc., all the time, and this is just at the sort of email level, if that makes sense, right? But what can happen if you get this bit wrong is if you email someone and their email is on Mimecast, for example, and that gets flagged, that can then get flagged to everyone else who also have Mimecast emails. So then what I've seen happen sometimes in our campaigns is you'll send an email, it'll get flagged, but then all of a sudden your bounce rate goes up massively, because basically every other person that you're sending to that also has Mimecast is now aware, this person has high risk and has low sender reputation, therefore don't let their email through, basically. So what we usually do for this, the way to approach it, is you want to make sure that we will split our lists, and we start off with the ones that don't have a seg, and then the ones, so we'll email, let's just say we've got a list of 10,000 email addresses. We'll start off with the ones that don't have a seg, and then we'll email the ones after that initial list is done that do have a seg, right? That are Mimecast, Proofpoint, Barracuda, and other ones, etc. Right, and that way we build up a little bit of reputation from the initial list and then reach out to those afterwards. Again, a little bit more advanced, so to speak, but it's important to know, and it just sort of requires a slightly different strategy if you're going after companies that have these kinds of things. And usually it'll be larger companies. It can also be smaller ones, but usually it'll be larger ones. Another thing here that's really important for your deliverability in general is making sure that you keep your bounce rate really low, which kind of ties in with what I was saying here. Above 2%, so 2% is kind of the threshold that we're really looking for. If you get to 2.5%, then kind of that's the range that you really want to be in. If you start to get above 3%, 4%, etc., then that usually will get flagged over time, and that will degrade your reputation of the actual mailbox and domains that are associated with that campaign or that you are sending from, right? So again, this is all really important because this is the literal engine of your entire thing. So you want to make sure that you've always got warm up on. You're always, you're setting up the sending domains and mailboxes properly. Again, just use a provider to do this for you. Like, it'll be so much easier. They handle everything for you in terms of all the technical setup and all that kind of stuff. Try and sort of structure the way that you do your, if you're reaching out to companies that have like sort of heavy in this, push those to the end of the list. So don't reach out to them until last, just because it will help in terms of like the overall health of your mailboxes as well, and try and keep your bounce rate as well as low as possible. And one other thing as well that I didn't mention here is when you want to scale your volume, make sure you scale horizontally. So if you are sending 1,000 emails a day and you want to take it to 5,000 or 10,000 emails a day or whatever the figure is, don't just send more from those mailboxes and domains that you have. Buy more domains, buy more mailboxes. Yes, it costs more in the short term, but in the long run, you'll get a more consistent and predictable and reliable way of actually getting pipeline. So yeah, just it's much better. Like, we've had clients before that don't want to spend the money necessarily on like buying new ones and stuff, and it's short term it makes sense. Long term, you run into more issues, and then you end up actually having the whole thing to stop because you're not getting replies anymore. You've got spam, like everything's going into spam, and then all of a sudden you have to wait another 2 weeks to set new things up and so on. So it's just not worth it. It's well worth just having a little bit of extra budget towards actually getting the domains, mailboxes and stuff set up properly. Second layer is data. So why data matters. So again, just talking on the bounce side of things, you just want to make sure that in order to actually do this, you are cleaning all of your data. So you want to make sure that you're actually using an email verification tool or software to be able to actually properly clean your data and not just take it for kind of what it is from platforms. Like, for example, Apollo will say that most of their data is verified. I think they have improved recently, but you always want to run that through like a proper verification tool just to double, triple check. Because again, if you start getting a bounce rate of 5-10%, like that is a biggest indication that to these email service providers, i.e. Google and Microsoft, that you don't know the people that you're messaging, because if you knew the people that you're messaging, why would their email bounce 10% of the time, right? It's unlikely. So therefore, that's what flags, lowers your reputation. That's what causes the issues. So good data in this aspect is really important here. So in terms of lead sourcing, what we use and the stack that we use for this is, number one is Blitz API. So this is essentially it's not even it's a platform, but it's literally just an API. We connect it to Claude Code, and in Claude Code, we're able to build lead lists of, for example, I want to find all the founders in the US between 11 and 200 employees, blah, 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 whatever you want to put in there, right? And from, in SaaS companies and so on and so forth. So we're able to do that in natural language in Claude Code, and we're able to do a company search, people search, and so on and so forth. So we're able to do quite a bit there with it, with Blitz API, which is awesome. The great thing about them as well is they've got basically unlimited data for like one flat fee, which works really well if you're trying to sort of scale things up. So yeah, they're really good. Another two that we use as well, AI Arc and Prospeo. They allow us to kind of fill in the gaps where sometimes we don't want to build as large of a list, and we can use more like refined filters and stuff. AI Arc and Prospeo also powers kind of like a lot of the data engine. The good thing with AI Arc and Prospeo is that when you do export from their platforms, the emails are actually verified. And I know I said earlier that I don't trust that, but there are certain platforms like those two that do allow us to actually export because they verify them with the same basically the same tool that we would use to verify them afterwards, right? So you just want to be 100% sure that when you pick a provider, that's why I suggest these, that they're actually doing the verification properly, if that's what they claim. And then all of these tools will allow us to do the email finding as well. So when we build the list for people in Blitz, AI Arc, Prospeo, etc., we'll also able to get the emails as well from there. So that makes it so much easier. So we can now build the list, get the emails, and do all that in one. And again, like I said, We will validate the list from, for example, from Blitz through, we use a tool called Million Verifier. You can also use another one called BounceBan, which is what I believe Prospeo uses BounceBan, and AI Arc uses BounceBan as well. So that's the data side of things. We'll usually have a couple of steps after we've built the initial list with AI to classify the companies, make sure that for example, things like the company names are clean. Like, we don't want to reach out to, some company LLC .co.inc, whatever. Like, we don't want that, so we remove that. We don't want it all caps, things like that, right? Normalize it, make it sound like actually human. Also check, we're able to scrape the website. We're able to check, is this company actually a SaaS company? If we've built a list of technology companies, we want to check, is this actually a SaaS company, or is it a recruitment company that works with software companies, for example? And you can do that by scraping the website and then using AI to classify it. So those are important steps there as well in terms of your data hygiene. Again, all of this comes together to build the actual engine, right? So that's also really important. And then here, mobile enrichment. So we've just started using a provider called Better Contact, basically like a waterfall provider. As soon as a lead replies, they will go into a workflow that essentially will try and find their mobile number. And this only happens for interested replies. So when a lead says, yeah, I'm interested, please send me some more information, whatever it is, that'll go through, they'll go to Better Contact, we'll then try and find their mobile through Better Contact, and then that'll go into Slack or emails, whatever it is, and then the rep or relevant person can give that person a call basically and just say, hey, so you just replied to my email, you got a minute or whatever it is to chat about this thing, right? And that alone, that's been so useful for being able to book in more people, because they're just, people are so much more likely to actually book into a meeting when you call them after the email. And so we use email as a hand raiser, essentially a way to get them to go, yeah, I'm interested, and then to take them to the next step through calling them, and then obviously nurture and follow-ups after. Clean data is what lets the infrastructure actually stay healthy. So all of these things, keeping bounce rates low, making sure that the data is clean, using good data providers, all this kind of stuff. So making sure that the list is clean and not full of garbage is really important as well. Because a lot of times when you build an initial list with data providers, unless you put in the absolute perfect filters, you're going to get like 10, 20, 30% of the data that's in there. Like, they're going to be the wrong type of company. They're going to be in the wrong industry, or like they're not going to be the right type of person, or it's going to be, you wanted directors of X, but it's actually, pulled directors of this or whatever it is. Like a common one, for example, that comes up is if I'm looking for owners and I put owners, right, as who I'm searching for, a product owner might also come in there, for example, and things like that. So we want to make sure that we're using AI or proper filtering to remove those and have as little noise as possible. Because again, this is also going to help when you're sending the email and you're sending it to the wrong person. If people report you as spam and things like that, it's going to tank your deliverability over time. So that's why all of these things need to come together to make sure that the engine actually runs properly. Step number 3 is copy, and the offer, and also AI as well. So copy very much follows the offer. Copy fails when the offer fails, right? So this aspect here is really important. The offer precedes everything, and the offer is the most important thing. What are you giving to the prospect that is going to say, yeah, I'm interested in that, right? The copy itself is the way you dress it up. The offer is the thing that you're actually giving to them, which is 80% of the entire email, really. And I've got other videos that kind of go in depth on that side of things. But here, this is a really important point. AI doesn't fix bad offers. It just sends a bad offer faster. And I think a lot of people think that if they just use AI in the process, it's just going to make it magically better. It doesn't. You still need to have really good fundamentals. You need to understand your ICP and who you're going after. You need to understand their pain points. You need to understand what do they care about, their language, all of this kind of stuff, and present an offer that is interesting to them. Those things are fundamentals that are the most important thing. AI and the way that you kind of put the copy together is just a multiplier on that. Without that, without that, it's like trying to times it by 0. It just doesn't work. It's not going to go anywhere. And like I said, I ran through this in a separate video. But realistically, with the copy, we want to make sure that everything is short, direct, specific. So, and again, I've run through this in other videos as well. When we're doing sort of high volume, we always use spin tags as well, which obviously which can help with deliverability when you're doing really high volume, to make sure not every single email looks exactly the same. Obviously, it's a fine balance between making sure that the email actually reads well and also having spin tags. And yeah, with AI, we use it mainly for classification, research, and things like that on the front end, on the data side. And then if we are going to use it within the email copy itself, we'll use it as usually like a variable, right? For like a short little snippet, one line, things like that, right? So we might generate, I don't know, the ICP from their website, or we might say like the industry variable, or whatever it is. Like we might have a small variable in there. We don't do it for the entire email. We only do it for small aspects of the email, right? And to be honest, still so far I've found, like, even if you test AI against like a good offer, if you have the main thing is to get your copy working and emails working with a good offer. Once you've got your emails working with a good offer, and it's like basics, kind of like, do you want this thing, or we have this thing and it would help you with this, are you interested? If that works, then add AI to see how it could improve. But don't think that you can add AI first before figuring this thing out. Like, you just cannot, right? You can test them side by side, but AI will not. People don't magically want something just because it's written by AI, right? You need a good offer. They want something because it solves a problem for them, right? And AI doesn't necessarily do that, whereas the offer does. So yeah, use AI to scale personalization, not to replace like the thinking behind a campaign. You should spend time using AI to research things and pull that information in, so that you can then think of different angles, or you can use it to help you come up with some ideas for angles, like from sales calls, from all sorts of different stuff, so that you can put it together like that, basically. And I know in other videos as well, I've mentioned like we use AI to build some of the copy. We do, and it does perform very well. But what I mean by that is we've got lots of skills, and this is like a much more advanced sort of way of doing it, but we've got lots of skills where we've pulled together like all of our clients and their different results and everything. We pulled together like what's actually working, and we've got lots of like different steps to enable it to have more human tone and things like that. So obviously, if you're just trying to build something and trying to get it to work, like, don't think about that side of things. Just think about, how can I get a good offer in front of the right people? Like, that's the main thing. That is literally like 80-90% of the job. Play around with this stuff once you've got that working and it's actually doing something. Otherwise, it's just going to add extra stress, headache, and just like, it doesn't always work. Cool. And then so yeah, there's some learnings that we've had from our campaigns. Like, tweaking the offer can have a 12x difference between the same audience, the same infrastructure, but one has one offer and another has a different offer. Like, it makes a world of difference. It is the biggest multiplier, the biggest lever that you can pull. And we had another one where we had like a 19x difference, basically. Same product that we were selling, just different way of positioning it, different way of doing the offer, with risk reversals, guarantees, things like that, right? Things that will work on cold traffic. And again, I've got a separate video going through that. Yeah, this is a great offer written by a human beats a bad offer written by GPT or Claude every single time, basically. So yeah, that's really important. And then the final layer, which is attribution, which is closing the entire loop. So again, if you close the loop back to revenue, if you don't close the loop back to revenue, you scale the wrong campaigns. And what I mean by that is, if you just look at your dashboard and you just see like, oh, we sent this many emails and this one's the one that's getting leads, and that's all you look at, then that's the only sort of feedback loop. Like, it's a relatively short feedback loop. Now, of course, if you're just setting up campaigns and you haven't booked enough meetings yet, or you haven't closed enough deals yet, that's all you've got to go off. So that's absolutely fair enough. But once you start getting the meetings data, and especially once you start getting deals data, that information needs to feed back into the campaign, into the campaigns that you create, so that you can say, okay, we have 5 campaigns here. This one got the most interested, but actually what we found was the conversion rate between this to meetings was actually a lot lower. And the people that did come on the meetings were like tire kickers. Whereas this one here got way less replies and interested, but actually we closed 2 deals from it over enough period of time. Obviously, like, you have to make sure that the comparison is fair. You can't base something on like a week of sending and another one on like 2 months of sending. It needs to have a fair comparison. But the goal then is now saying, okay, that one closed 2 deals. Let's do more of that one rather than the other one that actually looks good on the surface because it's got loads of leads and all this stuff. But the other one actually is closing the deals. So that's kind of how I'd structure it. The way that we do this is we just sync everything up to your CRM, and then that CRM sits underneath Claude Code, and then Claude Code is able to analyze those campaigns, right? And we're able to see, okay, cool, right? Cold email campaign A, resulted in this, these deals being created, and then this one being, closed one, etc. And then we can pull that information and understand, right, it was campaign A that was responsible. We want to make sure that we have a full loop. That's really, really important. The other aspect that's also really important is the step before that, which is the meetings, to understand how many are actually like qualified meetings. And then on top of that, when you do sales calls, are we able to record the sales calls? Can we get the transcripts from the sales calls? Because then all of that information that you're getting, right, you've done a campaign, you've done multiple campaigns, and you realize that, okay, interestingly enough, on campaign A, the sales calls that we did have, most of the people's objections was like X, right? Provided you have the same offer. Most of the time the calls might be the same, but like I'm saying that there might be things or insights that stand out from a call recording or from the transcripts in general that you can then feed back into the campaigns, which is why you just want to make sure that there's always a loop going around, essentially, which is why CRM hygiene is really important, and that's a separate thing, but making sure that we attribute what's happened from cold email. And again, it's never going to be perfect because there might be people that learn about you from cold email, and then they might watch your content, and then all of a sudden then they'll book in a call and you're like, where did you come from? And it's like, okay. So it's not always perfect, but as long as you have a general idea most of the time and it's good enough, then you can understand which campaigns to scale and which not to. So I hope that this was useful. This kind of just goes through how you can set up your own email engine, or how we've set up our own email engine that sends 2.5 million emails over the past 6 months and actually generates revenue through basically the system here. The goal is to focus on the fundamentals and make sure you get the fundamentals correct. Good offer, good infrastructure, people see your message and to the right people, and making sure that you learn as you go along and those learnings compound, right? All of these things is what makes up an email, the engine here. And we use our platform as well. One other shout out here, which is we use Email Bison. They've been brilliant in terms of like deliverability. So I would say they go on the infrastructure layer alongside Scaled Mail. Scaled Mail provides the mailboxes, and Email Bison is the sending platform. So we connect Scaled Mail mailboxes to Email Bison and we send from there, basically. And they've been really good because they allow us to send really high volume with really good deliverability. So anything, just to round this up. So what we do, if you'd like to work with us, we build and run this engine for B2B companies on a performance basis. So you only pay for qualified meetings that actually show up. If you'd like to work with us or book a call and just try and understand, is a link in the description if you want us to build something like this for you, or just in general, generate you qualified meetings with your ideal customers on a performance basis and only pay if they show up. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.